if you're on a team where there's a very clear mission that everybody believes in and is aligned around, and then you execute that mission and work together as a team with a shared set of values, and you know what those are, what the high priority ones are, you can do incredible things.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Welcome to the Unlock Potential podcast, and today we're talking about how do you stop great employees from leaving. Here's the problem. You can pay them more, you can do all these great things, but paying more doesn't work. It's not sustainable. That is not the answer. And we have a special guest today. We have Tom. Tom is a great leader that has led many high-performing teams from various companies, such as small startups, all the way to Google, YouTube. He's now an advisor, investor, and kind of a big deal. And in case you're wondering, yeah, the card's blank. Let's get started. All right, so today I am super excited. We have a special guest. We have Tom here. Tom, I just want to show you my shirt. I'm really happy about the shirt, so check it out.
Is that Superman?
Yes, it's the new Superman. So the trailer came out not too long ago. And I don't know if you're a DC or Marvel fan, but I'm inspired. I love the trailer, so I'm super excited with this upcoming movie.
I have not seen the trailer yet, but I love a good trailer, so I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, and then I would say it's the cutest dog in the world, and so definitely take a look at the trailer, and I would bet money. I bet $1 that you would agree. So Crypto is Superman's dog, and I think it's literally the cutest dog in the world. And so I'm super excited to see the movie and see Crypto in action.
Interesting, cute dogs. I saw a movie with a cute robot this weekend called Wild Robot.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. That was a fun movie.
Nice. That's I see the trailers for that. It looks awesome. I would definitely like to see that too. Yeah.
It was, and if you have kids, it's great. The whole family can watch it.
Love it. All right, I'll go this weekend. I think.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's on streaming, so you don't even have to go
streaming.
anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
even better. Cool. Well, today we have Tom here, and so I want to kick it off with Tom. You have such a storied career, being a startup founder, and eventually going to YouTube as part of Google. And you've worked at a lot of other great companies too. And so we'd love to, for you give a quick intro about yourself and take it from there.
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a liberal arts kind of career in that there are like two different paths. I do some executive coaching and career coaching. And I always tell people look, there's one path where you keep specializing. And then there's another path where you kind of optimize for diversity of experiences and just kind of having cool new life experiences. And I took the latter route. So, I've been a consultant, I've been a founder, I've worked at startups, I've worked at Microsoft, I worked at Google. I've also worked on presidential campaigns. I do coaching, consulting. I do some investing. So, I've done a lot of different things, but certainly the bulk of my career is leading product development teams in the tech industry.
Yeah. And I think, you have such a storied career in that sense. And to a lot of people, even the idea of a product role, there's no linear path, right? Like how do you get into product, and what is the right way to move up? And like all careers, there's no, follow this sequence of series from A to B and so on. There's definitely, that's not the way of life. And so it's great that you have that. But I want to focus in particular though. So for us, it's really, we've really focused on for CEOs in particular. Hey, if you're a CEO or a founder of a company, especially if you have a lot of blue collar workers, would love to get your experience of sense of what does it mean to have a great team? Because you've been on so many teams. And I think in tech, we've had so many great learnings that we can share with people in the industry. And so we'd love to get your take on just a team in general. What's the best and most favorite part of team you've ever been of, and kind of go from there.
I've been on a lot of different teams in my career. In high school, I played lacrosse. So it was a team sport. But then in high school, I also worked in retail
Oh, really?
at a pet store with a team of hourly workers. I was one of them, and then the owners. Um, and then I've worked in teams, startup teams, where it's a bunch of renegades like trying to beat the odds. And then I've worked in teams where, like at Google, where the it's super selective place, and they try and put together these teams of very capable people, um, and then actually the presidential campaigns is another type of team where it's just crazy and chaotic. I would say the one thing that um, kind of is a common thread across all of them is mission and values. Those are probably the two biggest ones. Like you can kind of try different approaches to process and measurement and that kind of thing. But if you're on a team where there's a very clear mission that everybody believes in and is aligned around, and then you execute that mission and work together as a team with a shared set of values, and what those are, what the high priority ones are, you can do incredible things. And similarly, when you're on a team where the mission is unclear or there's a disagreement on it, and then there's a wide variety of different interpretations of the values, it can make it a really difficult team as well.
Yeah, because it's like you can take the mundane and make it extravagant, or taking something very extravagant, make it mundane, right? And if you don't have a
Yeah.
clear, like a line of purpose. But let's get to what's the best team that you've been on? Give me an example of a team when you look back and go, this is the team that I really liked. I'll share one example. Like when I was in high school, cheerleading was my thing. Like I love cheerleading. This idea of, hey, and we were underdogs big time, right? Like, hey, we wanna go for it and make it to nationals. And so I think that camaraderie. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. What's a team that you're most proud of?
In 2006, I was on a very small team at Google that was launching a new product that was like a zero to one product. We never had any users on, and then we kind of built it from scratch. And what was amazing about that team was I still remember we would sit in this little office. It was like a fishbowl office, so it had glass walls, but we were all enclosed. I think there was like maybe 5 of us in this office. It was me, a few engineers, and then we had a designer who was like right outside the door. And what was magical about that was the um, the kind of bandwidth for communication was perhaps the opposite of what you see in the worst examples of distributed teams where everybody's on Zoom, and it takes you got to get on a Zoom to have a conversation, or you just don't have that opportunity to kind of swivel your chair and just look at the person to the right or left of you and talk about something. So that was a really special team because we were so close. Secondly, we were building something that customers really loved and that like the world really needed. And then we were getting recognition for it from Google and the founders, and won a bunch of awards. But we were not. They gave us a lot of agency, so they didn't really kind of micromanage us either. And if I could have bottled that, I would have. It's just it's rare to have those kinds of experiences where all of the stars align. Like sometimes you have a great team, but the business outcome just wasn't what you wanted. But in that case, we kind of, it all happened at the same time. It was amazing.
Right. As you mentioned that, it reminds me of also YouTube in particular. I remember, like my last company, YouTube was a customer, and in the early days, what most people don't realize was YouTube was the underdog. Like if you worked at YouTube at Google, that was not something to be proud of. That was kind of like, oh, you're those guys. You're the ones bleeding cash. You're the ones like you don't even have a business model. And so I think in many ways, if you're on a team like that you can really corral the troops, you're really going against the grain because in many ways you were not seen as the future. You're just seen as like a side project. And so yeah, was that your experience there?
So I joined in 2016. So by that time, YouTube had, I joined YouTube in 2016. So by that time, YouTube had reached a point where it was no longer this like, oh, what an interesting business Google bought, years ago. And it was like, oh, this could be like a very big deal for Alphabet. So when I was at Google in '06, I was on the revenue generating side on AdWords. And I do remember we acquired YouTube around the time that I joined. And there was a lot of discussion around did Google overpay? Like, why did they do this? It had all these copyright issues. Like, there were all these lawsuits going on. And at that time, the video ad market wasn't quite there yet. So I did notice that there was like a regime change from the original kind of pre-profitability YouTube to the YouTube that I joined that was on the path to profitability and then eventually made it, led by Susan Wojcicki, who was a VP in the ads group and where Google started like in her garage. Now, I think the interesting thing about that is that it's not that the previous leadership at YouTube was not good, but they got it to a massive amount of scale. And then a new leadership team was brought in to kind of get the financials sustainable without killing what was making YouTube successful. So that's an interesting one where as the team evolves and as the business evolves, you might need different leadership team. Like in the NFL, like certain stages in the franchise, you might want to bring in a new head coach. Other times you're like, you don't want to change anything.
Yeah, yeah, and even in businesses, right? There are times when technologies change or there's shifts, and it's like, hey, we need to adapt and get people on board and kind of go from there.
Yeah, or the classic startup example where the founder does a great job, and now you need maybe they're kind of earlier in their career and they have all the fire in the belly, but now they've got to kind of get it ready to go public. You might need a different kind of whole management team than you did when you were going 0 to 1.
Yeah, yeah, and we gotta level up our game, or if we want to go from like one branch to two branch, or one team to two teams, or one store to one store, two stores. Yeah, but definitely there's that. Speaking of which, I want to go at a different angle here. So as we think about career progression, so that's a struggle for a lot of founders and leaders. And you think about, hey, I have a staff, and there's no well-defined career track, right? And so a lot of jobs, it's kind of like, hey, you do what you do, but there's no sure, there's this management path, but if you're an individual contributor, there's no clear delineation of how you progress and how you move. And so in many ways, I think about product had the early kind of the same thing, right? Where there's no clear, like you don't even know how to get there, let alone progress. But obviously in tech, they've invested in a lot of leveling and things like that. But yeah, we'd love to hear about your journey around advice on how to build leveling and career progression. And not everything is always about a promotion, right? Because you can't get promoted every year. And if you do, I would say it's not very meaningful. But yeah, would love to get your take on that, like career progression.
Yeah, it does highlight something that the tech industry, especially large tech companies, have become pretty adept at, which is these. They used to call them career ladders. I think now the more progressive term is job profiles.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really? So ladders is gone? Job profiles.
Yeah, I think ladders had this connotation that you have to keep climbing up.
Oh, I see.
And if you think about Google early days, that was not an issue because the company was growing so much, like we did need to keep having people move up. But then as, it became like a whatever, $500 billion business, like you can't double that every year like you did in the old days. And so then we wanted to introduce this notion of like, look, there are certain levels where it is totally acceptable and okay to maintain at that level, even if you're a a high achiever and you're doing a great job. So, but the job profiles, whatever you want to call them, they generally describe the job and how that job becomes increasingly complex, impactful, and challenging as a person masters that area. And um, it's it's useful for a few reasons. One is it actually helps with hiring because you can be clear about what you're expecting out of people. Secondly, it standardizes things because then you have this issue where you bring in people from different companies or they have different backgrounds and their interpretation of what this role does is slightly different than yours. So you have that. And that's also helpful for evaluating employees. So you go from like, oh, the boss likes this person to like, no, we've measured them against this framework, and these check boxes and there's these forms that they need to fill out that require evidence that they have mastered these competencies or have had this level of measurable impact. That's not something I remember being prominent, certainly in my retail job back in high school, nor in like really early stage businesses or startups, because you just don't have time. You're trying to like survive. So the idea of having like a 5-10 year path for someone is not a high priority. But for businesses like smaller businesses that are already profitable and are doing well and are going to be around for another 10-20 years, hopefully, the idea of having these job profiles I think makes a lot of sense because it also gives the employee something to like work on so that they can feel like they're, even if you're not quote unquote promoting them, there's new skills they're acquiring, new competencies that they're demonstrating, new scope that they can take on. And that kind of makes the job more rewarding.
Yeah, it also gives them a sense of what they can find out their growth areas, because oftentimes, as a leader, you can't really remember everything and keep a pulse of everything. But here you have
Mm-hmm.
an objective way to share, hey, as you're moving up and progressing, here's the areas that we generally look for. And it's consistent and it's clear. So the struggle for a lot of companies is really they're actually reinventing the wheel. So in many ways, like in tech, we've invested heavily in this. So we have
Mm-hmm.
very clear definition of roles, levels, how to classify them, how to compare them in different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of small businesses and a lot of other industries, they're kind of like reinventing the wheel again and again and again. So that's why I'm really excited about the opportunity to share, at least in tech. Hey, here's how profiles work, and
Mm-hmm.
these different areas, and now they can kind of abstract that and then apply it to plumbing or electrical work or healthcare. Like there's just so many ways, right? And obviously some industries do have very clear guidelines and things, but a lot of industries don't. And so this is just an amazing thing for us.
Yeah, the other benefit is for the company is to the process of drafting and agreeing on those profiles by
Mm.
the ownership or the management team is as probably rewarding as using the profiles for the employees, because you can kind of figure out like, okay, what do we really value or what do we really want out of our sales staff at this store? Like, is it customer satisfaction? Is it revenue per day? Is it something else? Reliability or integrity or whatever. Those are the profiles force you to do a little bit of prioritization and to be really clear about what you're looking for. And then when someone's doing great, it's validating. And then if someone's not doing great, you could be really clear and objective about, okay, are they really hitting the profile? And then also with hiring as well.
Great. And then, what's your thoughts about motivating people? So now, I get this company, I got this,
Mm-hmm.
profiles, which is great. But one of the big things is also unlocking talent. Is really this idea of how to motivate and help people be accountable. Because in the end, I think they go hand in hand, right? Where Because I'll give you an example. If no one's working hard and you're the only one doing it, are you really going to keep it going? There's no way. Or if it's the other
Hmm.
way around, like everyone's really working hard and great and they're so supercharged, and I feel like I'm falling behind the others. I better pick up my game and kind of be a team player. And so I think there's a lot of momentum that goes with that.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'd love to get you to share your thoughts in that area.
Yeah, so I do look at the two as related but separate. So on the motivation side, there's you got to think about your employees like customers to some extent. Like there's an exchange of value there. They're giving you their time and efforts, and you're giving them something, partly compensation financially, but most people think about their employment in a more holistic way, and they may think about things like a sense of belonging. They may think about things like empowerment or having impact, or hopefully that they're passionate about the business's mission or product or service, or they're just personally very interested in it. So I think part of motivation is, especially if you're an owner of a business, thinking about like, well, why would I want to work at my company if I were 20 years younger, or whatever. what would be the pitch to me, and why would I stay, and why wouldn't I stay, and think about like whether you want to change any of those things. So I think that's a big part of the motivation, is like the value proposition to the employees, like what's in it for them. I think a lot of owners and managers are always looking at like, well, this team isn't working hard enough, whatever. That might be true, but we don't often enough ask ourselves like, oh, um, am if I were on my own team, would I stay? If I were in my own business, would I stay? If I didn't own it, you know.
Yep. Yep. That's a good
And
point.
then on the accountability, I'm a big believer in the OKR process, which is a very big part of how Google runs things. And that stands for objectives and key results. And the main thing is that I think humans tend to be pretty bad at holding ourselves accountable, and holding others accountable in a measurable way. So if there's only one thing you take away from an OKR, just know that a litmus test is, could an alien from another planet arrive and read this OKR and still be able to judge whether this OKR was met or not? So, as an example, since we're in the new year, I was discussing with my family, some New Year's resolutions, and one of our family was saying, "Oh, I'm going to work on sleep hygiene." And then I was like, "Okay, like what is that? How will we know if you've done that by the end of the year? Um, how do we measure that?" And so then we agreed, okay, well, what we really mean by better sleep hygiene is, a minimum of 8 hours a night of sleep, or a 2 hour non screen time window prior to this the beginning of sleep. Or another member of the family said, "Oh, I want to read more." And it's like, okay, well, how many books per period of time? Is it one book a month, and that kind of thing? So, interestingly enough, aside from salespeople who have a commission and maybe a target, I think a lot of businesses are like, "Hey, you come in." Like when I worked at the store, it'd be like, "Well, you come in, you work this many hours, and then we'll pay you at the end of the day," and that was it. Versus like, "Oh, you want to hit these certain goals that we'll all know if you hit them or not." So that's a big one for me, is the OKR process, and having bonuses or special recognition aligned with hitting or exceeding those goals is a great way to improve accountability.
Today's episode is brought to you by Tonda, the smarter way to retain and engage your skilled workforce. Here's the thing: high turnover, disengagement, and financial stress are costing businesses more than they realize. That's where Tonda comes in. Leading employers are already using Tonda's financial wellness benefits to boost retention increase productivity, and keep their best employees longer. And here's why this matters. Tonda is already helping major companies across the US, and unlocked potential listeners have the exclusive opportunity to get in before the rush hits the open market. Be among the first to supercharge your workforce with Tonda. Learn more at tonda.io/Jesse. That's TANDA.io/Jesse. So one of our big focuses is being a best boss. And so we want to find like advice on being a really great leader. And so I think we can all agree like, hey, when things are going well, we're growing, we're crushing it. That's kind of like easier anyways. But let's say you're at a startup or you're the underdog. You're in a resource starved environment. With tight deadlines, high expectations, very demanding customers, you get the or but in those in those environments, it's really a time where we need to unlock employee potential to really flourish. And so, what's your advice in that area? How can a leader really build trust and culture, and really just help people galvanize and crush it?
I've had the privilege of working under some amazing managers, and I've noticed that they generally fall across a spectrum of styles, a continuum. And one style is the absolute, um, you know, uh, they bust your chops night and day. Nothing's ever good enough for them. Uh, and the power of that type of management style is you generally will raise your game. Uh, Most people will. Many will not, and they'll just not be on the team anymore. um, but that's a pro. Is that it really stretches the team to kind of deliver. It's kind of like maybe the Bill Belichick kind of style. Let's say if you follow for those who follow football. And on the other extreme is the super warm and supportive and, kind of caring, positive manager. And maybe, to take that to an extreme, it's like, oh, everything you do, they're just thrilled with it. And then the positive side of that is it makes you want to work even harder for them in many cases because you feel appreciated. You call that maybe the Pete Carroll style of,
Right.
of coaching and leadership. What I have found for myself is that if I'm like 65% Pete Carroll, 35% Belichick, I feel like my team is gonna have the best chance to succeed. The reason being, if you're all Belichick, you burn people out, and some can resent it, and they'll be like, that Tom, he's just nothing's ever good enough for him, yada yada. He's always pushing us to do more and everything. But then on the other hand, if you're all Pete Carroll, people will not put in as much efforts unless they are intrinsically motivated. And sometimes they are, but many times like they'll need a little nudge and a little bit of reality check. I had a Carroll manager who then gave me a little tough love uh, after about a year and a half. And he was like, hey, there are things that you do have to work on. And it was like kind of a good wake up call for me. And then the next year, I was like the best person on the team and was kind of recognized for that. And I think he didn't go full Belichick on me, but he was like, look, we got to work on these things. And I want to help you, but I need you to do more in these areas. And that's all I needed. So I think maybe so there's that kind of continuum of styles, and everybody has to find this kind of natural combination of what does your team need, what does the business need, and what are you comfortable doing? Some people are not comfortable being Carol, and some people are not comfortable being Belichick, and so you got to be authentic to who you are. But those are some things that come to mind.
Cool. And how do you identify? So when you think about a leader, you have a very diverse team, right? All kinds of people. And so when you think about, I think I can really help unlock this person and grow them in some way. And so
Mm-hmm.
how do you identify the people that with potential and they're worthy of more time and investment, and how do you trigger that and do it in a meaningful way?
I actually think the high potential people, it's almost impossible not to recognize them. Like it's just usually very obvious. Like, wow, this person is operating at a level that is well beyond what their peers are doing, and they're just killing it. And in which case, your job as a manager is to say, okay, well, how can I take this person to their natural level of slight discomfort and help them grow and get the most out of them for the company, but also help them kind of have maximum scope and complexity in their work. Um, Now, I think then the other extreme is the folks who are not working out. You usually know those pretty well. The hardest is actually the middle, because they tend to get overlooked because they're not the squeaky wheel, but they're also not the superstar. And for those folks, um, I think part of your job as a manager is to make sure you have done enough to know that, hey, are there superstars kind of in waiting in this middling group? And usually everybody has some unique, special kind of talent. And, one person may be great working with customers. Another one is super organized and they can kind of like redesign the whole back room. Or another person is like great with, finances, or really good problem solver, whatever it is. Part of the job as a manager, I think, is to figure out who's who's playing what positions on the field, and how do we kind of set everybody up for
Nice.
maximum
So
success.
some money ball strategy
Yeah,
there, right? Yeah, using some
yeah.
money ball and thinking that's a great strategy, because it makes sense, because a lot of people they do want to grow, do want to try different things, and maybe they're not happy. Yeah, I kind of remember in when I work in restaurants, sometimes, I just want to cook. I don't want to take orders. It's kind of like
Hmm.
being customer facing is like their biggest nightmare. But being in the back and being an amazing chef is like, hey, I would do that all day long. I would love that. And so yeah, I think putting people, setting them up for success, but also catering to what they're excited about and comfortable in is definitely
Yeah, and
really.
sometimes it's as simple as just asking people,
Mm,
like, what do you like to do? What kinds of stuff do you want to work on? Do you want to do more of as part of this team? And unless you intentionally make time for those conversations, they rarely happen. What happens more often is you'll get a resignation.
mm,
And if it's a high performer, it might be they didn't feel challenged and they
right.
found a more interesting opportunity elsewhere. And if they are a middling performer, it could be that they felt overlooked or they didn't feel like they were in the right spot. So, these are things that require intentionality. And as a manager, it's hard because these are the conversations that are never urgent. There's no reason you need to have that conversation with,
Well,
you
until it's
know,
too late. Until they're like, "Hey,
yeah,
Tom, here's my 2 weeks notice," and then
right.
then it's too late, right? It's like, "Oh, I've already made a commitment." Yeah. So how do you get ahead of that? So definitely, it happens, and it's never great. And so yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of what uh, you see happen in larger established corporations is there's a calendar and there is a periodic performance review process. And now I know if folks are from small businesses hearing this and be like, well, I'm not going to turn into General Electric or whatever. You don't have to make it that complicated. It could be, hey, every 4 months or every 6 months, we're just going to have a cup of coffee and we're going to answer these 3 questions, like, how's it going? What's working? What's not working for you as a member of our team? And, where do you want, what kinds of challenges do you want to take on, or what kind of growth do you want to earn for next period? It doesn't have to be some 20-page form. There could be no paperwork, but I would challenge people to think about, when was the last time you had that with all of your employees? And I know that if it weren't for HR forcing me to do it, like, I might have sometimes put it off. So having some of that structure is kind of healthy, and committing to it really makes a difference.
Yeah, actually, that's a fantastic way to put it. Because I think about even myself. It's like if I'm, let's say, a bit disengaged at work, I'm just doing my thing, minding
Mm-hmm.
out, like doing okay, and then an opportunity comes by where, hey, you know what? It's more exciting over here. We got something new for you. Oh,
Yeah.
really? I'm not really growing. I'm not really, I don't even know who my boss is or whatever. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely, you're more open to suggestion and possibilities. Whereas if you're, yeah, if I really feel like, oh man, they're investing me, I'm investing them, I love it here, I don't even want to have a conversation with you. It's like, hey, thanks, man, but I'm just. It's kind of like if you ever get a sales call, I feel, uh, I always have empathy for people doing cold calls, but you got a cold call, it's like, hey, I wasn't expecting, like,
Mm-hmm.
how often do you actually listen and talk? And most people don't, right? And so, and the reason is because you're preoccupied, you're really busy, you got other things on your mind. But imagine you're not, and they're offering something that you is really like meaningful. So I think that's what you want to do, right? Foster, get ahead of the situation so that if a cold call comes in, they're just going to hang up.
Yeah, and I think, especially if we're talking about small businesses, like, plumbing business, or, retail or restaurant, a lot of those staff, um, they're not thinking of this as a lifetime job for them. And so they're kind of always aware, and kind of keeping their ears open. And so you really have to proactively retain people before they leave, um, it's always hard to do a dive and catch when someone's resigned, and then it's never the same after they've decided to go. Even if you can retain them, there's something that's just kind of weird about that relationship, and like, management will always feel like, well, maybe this person will, maybe we'll hold them for another year, and then they'll kind of bolt at the next opportunity. And then it's also a little weird for the employee, because now they kind of feel like they have revealed that they were contemplating going somewhere else. So it's like, avoid that, and just, kind of retain the great people now before they have to, get in temptation's path.
Yeah. So, since you work in retail and other industries too, I'm hearing this a lot now. I don't know if you know the stat, but the number one reason people pay or leave, sorry, is because of perceived better compensation, if you want to call it that, somewhere else. And the grass is greener on the other side. It could be pay, it could be benefits, it could be something, but it could be very small. It could be $1 more an hour somewhere else. They will leave. And so, what besides cash, and even paying cash more doesn't always work. And so, besides that, what are some more effective ways to offer like benefits and rewards that get people to stay, and also offer like a better ROI for
Yeah.
a business?
I think part of it depends on the the people. I know, certainly, on every team and every business that I've worked on, if I like my coworkers, uh, it's worth a lot in compensation to me. Versus, I've been in situations where the comp was great, and I just, didn't love my coworkers,
Yep.
and it makes it harder to stick around, even with, I think the comp is is something that, if everything else is there, like, it holds the whole thing together. But if the other pieces are not there, even higher comp will only temporarily it's like duct tape, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, yeah.
So, to me, I think in terms of retaining people who leave for greener pastures, I really do think it comes down to, does this person feel valued and respected and appreciated? Secondly, does this person feel like they're having impact? They want to be successful. They don't want to be your problem employee. And so are you helping them have impact and know that they're having that impact? And I think the third thing is there alignment around the mission and values? And I think if you got those three things and you're just offering market competitive salary, like, you're probably going to be okay. And big companies, what they'll do is they'll do market, salary surveys, and they'll say our goal is to be in the top 20 percentile or the 50th percentile or whatever. But usually you don't have to be the highest paying employer in the market if you've got some of those other fundamentals really dialed in.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And I remember even when I graduated from college, I did not take the highest offer in terms of instead of salary and stock. I looked a lot around. Are the people having fun there?
Yeah.
Am I going to learn anything? Is there opportunities of advancement? What's the culture like? I want to work hard. I want to do all these things, but I also don't want to just go collect paychecks, right? And so I think often employers are not. You have to think about a much wider view. But I'm going to switch gears to this. So you have an executive coaching practice, and that sounds
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear a little bit about that and how you help executives.
Yeah. I started doing it formally in 2012, 2013, kind of on a lark. I wasn't sure if people would actually pay me to kind of help them out. But I knew that all my adult life, friends, former colleagues would often reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm trying to think through this big decision. Can I get your opinion or advice on something?" And I thought, oh, well, I wonder if other people who don't know me would be willing to to do that, because I enjoy it. I'm like, I think, a naturally, like, curious and empathetic person, and so anytime someone has an interesting problem, I find it kind of very rewarding to try and unpack it with them. Um, and so I started doing that part time, and then at Google, I participated in our internal coaching program and was probably one of the more prolific coaches for product leaders. And then I've continued to do that now, and so I work with usually people in the tech industry who are kind of mid to senior level, and they're trying to do a range of things. Either they're in a job but they're struggling and they want to kind of get things back on track, or they're just taking a new role and they want to make sure they're set up for success, or they have a new manager. That's a very common one, like struggling with a new manager. And then some people are in between jobs and they were impacted by the restructuring and they need help with practice interviews, and that whole process is a pretty unique skill to be able to interview well for a tech job, especially in this market. So a lot of people are investing and kind of upping their game there.
That's amazing, because I think not enough people realize that therapy, coaching, um, getting outside help is super helpful, right, in one's career, especially as a leader. In many ways, it's your job to be the front and the brunt of a lot of things, and a lot of times it's kind of lonely, and so it's great to have an ally to really lean on, bounce ideas, but also uh, derive from experience, right? Like having someone who's kind of like a mentor, right, a sage who
Yeah.
can really help you. So that's super cool. Um,
Yeah, I think part of the magic of having a coach is you're able to talk in a safe space to someone who is not your boss, nor your direct report or your peer, And you're just able to have conversations about what's really going on in a way that you wouldn't with your manager, or your investors or your spouse even sometimes. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then when you combine that with someone who's a coach who's kind of been around and has seen a lot of interesting things and can add like a unique and kind of valuable perspective and unlock some insights, it can be very powerful.
Cool. So if you're I'm sure I know you've met have coached a lot of executives and leaders, and so what's the number one piece of advice you have for them? Like a universal thing you just feel like, oh man, most people struggle with this, and here's the number one thing. What is that?
Probably the most like common thread across, I've probably coached hundreds of people now, is it can be challenging to get perspective and um, calibrate your view on a situation because you're always looking at it from your eyes. And part of many coaching sessions I've done is provided an opportunity for them to think about the situation where they're not on the dance floor, but they're on the balcony looking down and trying to figure out like what's going on and why are people reacting this way. Or, if it's a startup founder, who I work with, a lot of founders, like they're so, they have such conviction about their ideas that, and, and many people are hesitant to give them feedback that's not positive, especially in today's day and age. I think people want to be so respectful and helpful that they won't say like, "Hey, I think this idea has a lot of issues, and I personally would not pursue it if I were you." Like that is not something you people hear a lot. Um, so the one common thing is getting that outside perspective, because you've just been thinking about it through your point of view for so long that you sometimes can be miscalibrated with reality.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, getting unfiltered, real data is super important. Um, cool, and then you know, one other question I want to ask you is if we're talking to, or we're helping a lot of non-tech founders and CEOs. So what's a not so obvious thing or piece of advice you can give them? Because I think there's just so much opportunity for them to learn from tech. But yeah, what do you think is not obvious is something that they can really heed advice on?
Look, I don't know if this may be obvious to them, but it's something that I feel passionate about. There's an old adage like if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And as an example, my wife is a realtor, so she's a pretty much self-employed, small business in that way. And I'm a big fan of saying, hey, where's your key performance indicators? Where's the little dashboard where you're tracking how many leads you have, how many meetings you're taking, how many sales you've had, how much you've spent on marketing. And I think for small businesses, it is one of those things where they're putting out fires all the time. They're dealing with the crisis of the day, and the idea of having a measured KPI dashboard. And when you say dashboard, it sounds like it's a very fancy thing. It could just be a piece of paper with 5 metrics you care about, and you just record them maybe once a month. Maybe it's 3 metrics, sales, expenses, and new customers, whatever. Um, if you are if those are the important metrics for you and you're actually measuring them and maintaining that measurement, I guarantee you will make better decisions for your business, whether you're a one person show, a 20 person small business, or 100 person, or 100,000 person company. It's applies to everyone.
Love it. Love it. Well, today, Tom, thank you for coming. This has been great. I do have one final question, and I want to kind of close with this. Number one, what is the question I should have asked you? I didn't ask you. And number two, if someone wants to get in touch with you for some help on executive coaching, I also think you'd make a great CPO. But yeah, what's a way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can reach me anytime on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn address is Tom L. So it's linkedin.com/in/Tom L. So appreciate that. And I am on the lookout for like the next amazing CPO gig. So if people here know of one, especially if it's very mission driven and kind of super special, I'm up for it. Now, in terms of the question that you didn't ask me that you should have, maybe I'll answer this question, which is, uh, if I could go back in time, what kind of career advice would I give myself, coming out of college or something? I would say, um, minimize maximum regret. And that would mean, um, go after things and do things, uh, even if they're hard, because I everybody knows this. When you look back, you regret the shots you didn't take, not the shots you took that didn't score a goal. So I've taken that advice over the years and have no regrets, and then super excited about life and what's ahead for me as well. So I hope that's useful to people listening today.
Love it. That's awesome. Thank you again, Tom. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing what's next for you.
Thanks, Jesse. It was a pleasure being on the show.